Hi everyone, my name is Hannah, and today I'm going to be talking with you guys about mental health questions I have about myself. What I wanted to talk to you guys about is mental health, and mental health is unfortunately something I've been dealing with unknowingly ever since I was little. I've struggled with things mentally, specifically emotions, and I've been seeing a therapist. I saw a therapist for like two therapists at the same time for about 2 years. I saw them all for about 2 years. My insurance changed and I didn't see anyone for a year. And I went back into the deep pit of despair that is depression, and I was finding it hard to concentrate. I was being anxious. I was finding it difficult to start things, finish things, losing meaning in life, having existential crisis. I went back to therapy, and I've only been to 2 therapy sessions with her. I did something called EMDR with my old therapist, and I really liked it, and so I'm going to be doing that with my new therapist. I have not had anything traumatic happen to me in my life, or so I thought. Growing up, I just did not adjust to life transitions very well. If it was going to a new school, anything that was different, new, anything that was change in my life from a little child, I didn't handle it very well. I never was taught how to properly deal with it. My family just kind of let me do my thing, and eventually I would get over it. But time something like that would happen, I would respond in the same negative way. Thinking about PTSD, especially since I did EMDR therapy, and that is commonly treats people with PTSD and traumatic things. But like I said, my past therapist said I never really experienced anything traumatic because nothing happened to me that was actually like dangerous. I was traumatized by thunderstorms, but everyone experiences thunderstorms, and the thunderstorm didn't actually destroy our house or anything or kill anyone. It didn't actually affect our family at all, besides it made loud noises and made everything wet. Therapist in the past, she always said, if you can identify like the earliest memory you have, we can really help correct all these other negative associations you have with it. And I could never pinpoint where it all started, I suppose. And I always would kind of ask her, I'd be like, why on earth do I have all of these issues, these emotional issues that have impacted me horribly, that have completely destroyed like quality of life for me, and I haven't had anything traumatic. Like, I have a lot of symptoms that people who have traumatic events in their life do, but I had nothing traumatic happen to me. We kind of chalked it up to I just was super sensitive and never had anyone guide me through that, and so I came up with my own way of coping with it, and it wasn't a very good way. I did come to something that I never did EMDR with, a memory, and it was I was spanked when I was a kid. So spanking for me, it was from when I was a very young kid, like a toddler age is what my dad said, when you could walk around to around 6 or 7 years old. They spanked us. And then when I got around 6 or 7, they stopped spanking because we were getting too big, and they moved on to timeouts. And sometimes spanking, kids don't have any issues with it. It doesn't make them worse, it makes them better. Sometimes for kids, it makes them more aggressive, more defiant. And then for me, it just traumatized me. I had a thing where I always thought I was right, even from a little kid. Like when I was really, really little, I thought I was right and my parents were wrong. And if I got in trouble, I wasn't actually doing anything wrong. And so when I had an opinion like that, even as a little child, my parents' response to me having an opinion was to spank me because I was being a defiant little child. Little Hannah having opinions at a very young age that differ from her parents when it comes to obedience, even if it was obvious my parents were right, they didn't ever, at least in my memories, it doesn't seem like we ever had a lot of conversations where I would speak my truth and they would respond, and kind of like the social aspect of it. Like, you can have your opinions, I can have my opinions, and I value your opinions, but you still need to, you can't always be right. Or we go straight to, you're getting a spanking because you didn't obey us. The spanking was supposed to make me submit to my parents and give up my will and be like, okay, I will follow your rules. The problem was, I thought I was so right in those situations. I thought I was dead right, and I thought my parents were dead wrong, and they were gonna spank me, and this is an injustice. And so I took that extremely personally. I would run around the house, or at least I would try to get away from my parents. And there would be instances where my dad would have to literally pick me up and bring me to a room and spank me. My dad said sometimes he would say, go to your room, and then he would spank you in my room, and I would go to my room. He said I was always reluctant, every time I got spanked. I was not happy about it. I didn't agree with it. Now, sometimes I've heard stories with people who have gotten spanked before that they knew that they were in the wrong. Like, when they got spanked, they knew they deserved it, and that it was just, the spanking was justified. I think in my issue, I never identified it as being justified, so I never learned anything from spanking. Well, I did learn something, but it wasn't good. To this day, I have trouble with self-worth. Self-esteem. I feel worthless. Like, I feel like people don't care about my opinion. People don't take me seriously. I'm a joke. Like, right now, these are things that I deal with. Just the reason to keep going on is diminished. I mean, I was a fiery young kid who thought she was right and had an opinion, and it was met with, you are going to be spanked into submission. And, if I thought that the spanking was unjust, I am never going to learn how to socially interact with someone even if you think you're right. So that was my very early memories of also strong emotions. I felt my parents were treating me unfairly. I associate it with pain and hurt. I didn't like thunderstorms because the lightning and thunder would come randomly. I wasn't necessarily afraid of getting hurt. It was just, I did not know when the lightning and thunder would strike, and that freaked me out. Why on earth would that freak me out so much that I would have panic attacks for hours? Spanking thing, I put the dots together with spanking. Anxiety equals pain. And with the rod, like, you do not know exactly when you're going to get hit. I mean, I knew the moment my dad was very precise with what he did with spankings. He would take me to my room, or in a room, he would pull my pants down, expose my butt, he would hit me a couple times, and then he would put my clothes back on, and that was it. But you don't actually know when the contact will be. And you're blind to it, and it's very sudden, and it's coupled with high adrenaline and anxiety. So with thunderstorms, I'm pretty sure I connected the two. Heart would be racing, I would be sweaty, like so sweaty, my heart would be racing, my head would be, so insanely tense too. I would be like tense, heart racing, extremely sweaty, and I would be thinking the entire time, please stop, please stop, please stop, please stop, because I wanted the thunder to stop, and I would wait until the very last rumble was done and you couldn't hear it ever again. When the rain stopped, it felt like it was hours and hours, which it probably was like 2 or 3 hours, but it felt like it was all night long, every single time there was a thunderstorm, and this went on for years, all throughout elementary school. My parents said they tried to talk to me about thunderstorms, and their solution to the problem was, okay, Hannah, you can sleep alongside our bed. And I never bothered to tell them, the anxiety I was experiencing, because why? Every time emotions equal pain. Let's avoid that at all costs. As I got older, I would have other emotional issues, emotional outbursts. Parents would try to communicate with me, and you know what I would do? Push them away. I didn't want them, because that would equal pain. Another human being and my emotional vulnerability equals pain. And so I would push that away. Unbeknownst to me, I'm having flashbacks, as my therapist says. Certain things trigger me, and it wasn't always loud noises. It was, or sudden things. It would be like just general anxiety issues or change in life, but it can all easily be connected to the original memory of spanking. So fast forward, junior year of high school all the way to today, I'm 22 years old, and I would get panic attacks. I looked up PTSD attack on film because I don't really know what those are. You hear about them, but you don't actually see them. And there's this video that I came across that literally looked exactly like what I've experienced. And I'm like, what? That is not how I thought a PTSD attack would be. I always thought seeing things or something. But I'll just show you. This was the video that I watched. And this person is looking exactly like how I did. She even hits her head a little bit less aggressively than I used to do. I would literally pound on my head so much. Still get them today. But what happens for me is I don't see anything, but it's uncontrollable thoughts. I just call them anxiety attacks. I'm like, is a PTSD attack just an anxiety attack? My therapist called these episodes, she would call them flashbacks. She's like, you're reliving how you felt when you were a child. And I was like, well, what? No, I'm not thinking about how I was as a child. I'm just freaking out. And she's like, yeah, it's a flashback. And in my mind, I'm like, but I'm not thinking about the past. I'm thinking about things that are bothering me now with the emotions that I had as a child. So if you want to call that a flashback, I guess you could call it a flashback. What happens is my mind doesn't stop thinking about horrible, negative things. I have a lot of existential crisis, panic attacks, I guess is what you could call them. Are they flashbacks? It's like I am not seeing things, I'm not hearing things. I'm just experiencing strong emotions. Similar, pretty much, to how I did when I was a child. When I was a kid, I never dealt with anxiety or panic attacks well. That was how I dealt with it, was having the attack. When things got stressful, I would have panic attacks. And it wouldn't be just one, it would go on forever. And like that's how my body adapted to extreme stress or like really negative things in life. I just do freeze. I think I would just freeze or something. But here's a good example and how weird, anxiety is. For me, a tattoo. I don't have any tattoos. I am not afraid of the needles, the pain of getting a tattoo. That is nothing compared to the process of going in the tattoo shop, showing them an idea, talking to the eccentric tattoo people in the eccentric tattoo shop. Things that are different from me freak me out, and for no good reason. So I just avoid them. LA would probably be really freaky to me. Even just, I hate big cities and lots of people. But anyway, so for me, like the pain of getting a tattoo is nothing compared to talking to the people, walking to the tattoo shop, making the appointment, deciding on a tattoo, working with the artist, and then even having to sit there for hours on end with this person that I don't know that well. That's freaky. I've been avoiding calling to make an appointment for my dog's haircut for weeks now. But, I could care less about the pain of getting a tattoo. Like that's not scary to me. People, it's the opposite. I'm not afraid of the process of talking to people, but they're more afraid of like how painful it will be. And I'm like, pain is pain. Pain is predictable. It's a burning sensation that eventually goes numb, hopefully. whereas everything else isn't predictable. So that's just an example of like, maybe certain things do freak me out and you think that makes me a baby, but then other things don't, you know? Things that other people would be really afraid of don't make me scared. So do I have PTSD? Do I not? Was it a traumatic event? I mean, my mind read it as traumatic, and I have symptoms that are of a traumatic person. My dad, when he would spank me, he never was angry. Every spanking I got was the same. There wasn't one that was with a belt and one with a little stick. There wasn't one that hurt more than the other. There wasn't one with more spanks than the other. It wasn't ever to humiliate me. My dad never yelled at me. I've never been yelled at or insulted at by my parents. Like, I did a lot of insulting, I would say. I yelled a lot about, like, I insulted people. But my parents never called me names or belittled me or tried to humiliate me. The banking thing that we used was a curtain rod. Like, it was only ever a curtain rod. And it was a couple whacks. To me, it didn't matter if he was mad or not. I mean, obviously, if he was mad and being very abusive and being humiliating and yelling at me, like, that would probably be even more traumatizing, and it probably would have manifested a lot sooner in my life than it for me older. Even though, technically, there was lots of things in my life that held me back, because there were things like extracurriculars, I guess you could say, that I wanted to do, but I couldn't because I was too afraid. Like, I would have gone into sports in school, but I never did it because I was too shy. And it wasn't because, oh, I'm an introvert. It was because I was too afraid to do it. I probably would have taken up archery if I could. Like, in middle school, I read The Ranger's Apprentice and thought it would be really cool to be able to use a bow and arrow, but I never even spoke up to it because I was too afraid of the stigma around it. But I'm telling you, like, I don't know if there was no spanking early on and instead there was more social work and dealing with your emotions versus just spanking the defiant child out of it. Like, it didn't work for me. I don't know if that would have made me more social adapt, because I did not have friends. Like, in elementary school, I did not have any friends over to my house in elementary school. In middle school, I started to kind of do that. I was extremely shy and timid in middle school, or in elementary school. In middle school, I came a little bit out of my shell. And then in high school, I just got really depressed and sad and anxious. So it really sucks. And I knew growing up that I was holding myself back. I knew it. I wanted to be a part, like, of social groups and have friends and parties, but I would avoid people like the plague because I was afraid. So I really missed out on a lot of my childhood. Like, I wish I could go back and redo it. I wish I could have people over at my house and have parties and sleepovers I did have a party or two when I was very young, but I didn't have people over at my house and play and, like, those type of relationships. I don't remember ever. I said something to my therapist where I spent my entire childhood, like, trying to internalize and deal with all of my emotions internally without talking to anyone. And then when I started talking to a therapist when I was a junior in high school, I all of a sudden was, like, opening up and talking to this therapist, and it was great. And so I got sick of having to deal with everything internally, and I kind of just shut down. Done trying to figure this out because I'm just sick of yelling into the air, of talking to myself. I mean, kind of what I'm doing right now. I told that to my therapist, and she's like, well, unfortunately, you're an adult now, and this is when you do that, is when you're an adult. The idea of, like, childhood is meant for you to learn how to deal with your emotions and how you cope with life. Is what you learn that when you're a kid, and then when you're an adult, you are able to internally know what works for you and be successful and move on. But since I never got that, it kind of sucks. I have to figure it all out and do it kind of alone in a sense because I need to be independent. I was emotionally stunted, but I am willing to learn and adapt and really willing to try new things and just move on. You're humans, we're adaptable. It's just because I didn't figure it out when I was a kid doesn't mean I can't figure it out now. Like, I'm way smarter than I was when I was a kid, and it won't take me as long. And the good thing is I don't live in a really horrible environment. My parents are very loving and want what's best for me, and I don't have any friends really right now because I've isolated myself. So that's all I have for today. It's 1:13 in the morning. Good night, I guess.